Continuing the Jaylen Brown, Kevin Durant conversation with some what ifs, wondering if Jaylen is maybe looking at some other pursuits that could take him away from Boston. Did the Celtics know something? And Kevin Durant, is he interested in Boston at all? What's Kyrie's influence in this? Going to talk about it all after a brief detour about Carson Edwards, of all things. What's that about? You're going to find out right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Yeah, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Thank you for making this show part of your daily routine. Here for you Monday through Friday, most of the time, although we are now heading into a 3-day-a-week podcast starting next week. 3 days a week, Monday through Friday. So today is the Thursday podcast. You'll get a Friday podcast. And the next week, it's 3 days a week. Just getting into the dead of the offseason. But if anything breaks, we're happy to do a fourth or a fifth podcast. However, we need to do it to make sure you are informed, entertained, and all of that stuff. Podcast is free wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe to get it dropped right to your device. Show's also on YouTube. You can watch the show on YouTube and subscribe there, like, comment, all of that stuff there. I'm John Karalis. I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I'll get that right. I've only been working there for a couple of years. I'm in my 16th year covering the Celtics. So been around the team for a while. I've written a book called Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars, which you can pick up anywhere online. Today, we're getting into the what ifs. What if the unexplored Jaylen Brown, Kevin Durant stuff? Only because I keep listening to people talk about this, and I feel like they're just treating it in a way that maybe I'm wrong. I'm not taking this entirely seriously. So we're going to try to treat this. I don't know. We'll explore some of the studio space here. And I'm going to do it with my buddy, Tom Westerholm. What is up, Tom Westerholm? As I get my little green screen, little tweak. There we are.
There we go.
Clearly,
Yeah.
no, I mean, not green screen. I mean, me podcasting from the upper level of the Celtics practice facility. I broke out of the empty garden, and now I broke into the Celtics practice facility. I'm very obviously here live in the Celtics practice facility and not in my home with a studio under construction and a green screen behind me.
Yeah. No, but I assume Brad Stevens gave you a key card and everything. You can get in there.
Know, I talk about him so much. He said, John, I have no choice. I feel like this is the right thing to do. You're in here. I know you want the inside information. You have full access to me anytime you want. Run on that treadmill back there. I think mostly he's concerned for my health. I've put on a few pounds. He's like, John, I don't want you to die. Just hit that treadmill. I'll give you the key card to get in. And you can ask me questions that I won't answer in so many words over here at the facility. So,
yeah, I think one of my prouder moments on the beat was in 2019 when I was working on a story on something else entirely, but it involved Carson Edwards. And so Carson let me into the practice facility, and I was shooting around with somebody there, and I made like 3 threes in a row. And Carson said something along the lines of like, well, hell, why aren't we doing the interview with him? And I was like, you know what, Carson? You're 100% right. I should also
Carson.
be in the NBA.
You're both almost as successful in the league.
I've never lit the Cavaliers up in a preseason game.
No, that's true.
Shout out to Carson Edwards, man. I like that guy.
Look, Carson Edwards, I've said it a million times. I think that dude has a long career with a lot of money to be made. I just am not sure that it's at the NBA level.
Correct.
But that's fine. I mean, it's not fine for a guy like Carson Edwards, who is like, well, wait a minute, I want to be in the NBA. You're like, yeah, well, it's sorry, but
Yeah.
there are millions of dollars to be made elsewhere. And if you can just embrace I'm going to live in Barcelona and make millions of dollars, then I think you're going to be very, very happy because
Yeah.
Barcelona is a very beautiful city and you can make a lot of money there playing some fun basketball, less grueling basketball. And I think it'd be a very nice life over there. So there
I
are many European
could not
cities with
agree
good
more.
basketball teams, and they should be. Yeah, look, what the hell? Let's just dive into this part for a second because I love this. I love this concept. Everybody wants to go to the NBA, right? If you don't make it to the NBA, you're some sort of failure, and you're quitting and all that stuff. But there are only 450 to 500 spots, man. So if you're Carson Edwards, if you're Tremont Waters, if you're any of these fringe guys, Malik Fitz, is it better to sit at the end of a bench and make $300,000, or I don't know, pick one of these European cities with a major team and say, oh, I could make more than this and live in a wonderful city where it doesn't matter if I don't speak the language. They will speak English for me and I will live a very, very nice life. Just open your mind to that. I think a lot of guys will be very happy with their basketball lives.
Ask Shane Larkin how he feels about playing overseas ball and just being like the greatest, the greatest thing, right? Like, Shane Larkin is awesome over there. And
Yeah.
yeah, like, I mean, there's a lot to be said for that. Like I mean, look, you'll never catch me advocating for flying around from snowy city to snowy city in January over, I mean, first time I saw Kristaps Porzingis was in Sevilla, Spain. Let me tell you about Sevilla, Spain. It will, at least I haven't been in many years, but it was the perfect place. Like back when I was there, it was so good. And yeah, I mean, I would highly advocate for playing in Sevilla, Spain over any of these snowy cities in January.
Let me tell you something. I played in a little town called Nafplio in Greece. It was for people who want a little sense of where I played, those crappy little videos, the crappy little gyms in the Giannis when he was 14 playing in the pros in Greece or whatever age he was, in those crappy little gyms. That was my life. Those little gyms were my life. And I was, too young to appreciate it, too young. And I think my perspective, and that was a much lower level. Like I want to be clear. I was never, ever, ever, ever close to playing in the NBA, getting a shot in the NBA, getting a tryout like I was never, ever that close. I was a low level pro overseas. I never make any bones about that, but I was a pro. And I look back on that and I was like, man, I wish I appreciated that more in the moment, because even that, making less than what the minimum is in the NBA, I was like, but they pay for my food. They paid for me to live. I, would sign autographs and, people come up to me and you feel like, it's like, man, this is great. I got in trouble for partying. So you had that level in there, which I shouldn't have, but I, got reamed by the coach for being out till 4 a.m. So you have all of those, you have every little trapping there at a much lower level. And I think back on that, I'm like, man, Napoli was such a nice little city. Imagine being in Athens and playing in Athens for one of the big teams where you're making real money, significant money, millions potentially. If you're Carson Edwards, you're playing in a place like that for millions because you're going to be the best player in the freaking country. So I only speak from my own experience, a tiny level of like regret. Not, I mean, I learned from that and it has helped shape me. And I'm much more willing to take chances now because of that. But these guys on the fringes who are fighting to be in the NBA, like I get it, But this is still your job. Let the ego go for a second and make your money somewhere. And you know what? In 4 years, Carson Edwards dominating some German league, Spanish league, wherever league, people might be like, geez, man, this dude is killing it over there. Let's bring him back. Let's bring him back. Let's see what he's got in the NBA. Then you can get your NBA contract. You can come back and give it a shot. And you know that's always there. But don't waste your time. And most importantly, don't miss out on the money. Don't miss out on that life. It's a good life over there. It's a good life. You can do it for a few years, expand your mind, expand your horizons. A lot of these fringe guys, I will wholeheartedly encourage them. Get overseas, get to Europe, get to, it doesn't have to be Europe, get to Southeast Asia, get to other parts of the country, other parts of the world, I should say. And there are opportunities out there for people to just make a lot of money and live very, very well.
Yep. I completely agree.
All right. Well, Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, Kevin Durant are not going to be those guys.
They might be playing in the U.S. next year.
Probably going to be playing in the NBA for quite some time. That was a fun first segment for me. Not at all what I was expecting, but just joking around.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Shout out to Carson Edwards.
Shout out to Carson Edwards. I really do. I think he's a good dude. And
I liked him. I thought he was a very interesting guy. Like he was an interesting guy to talk to. They was not like, you get a lot of players who would be interesting if they kind of let themselves open up a little bit, but like they kind of do like the media thing. But Carson, he didn't always open up, but like he always had, when you talked to him, he would usually just kind of say something interesting, not like inflammatory, just like something that piqued your interest. I always appreciated that about him.
Yeah. I think Carson's good. I hope he can realize his full potential. All right, let's. Okay, that was fun. That was a fun, not scheduled part of the podcast, but we're gonna keep that in. This is what happens when Tom and I don't talk extensively before the podcast and get all of these takes out and are just random. We record like 30 to 45 minutes of like 2 hours of talking, so that's what happens when we don't get that. But I will spend about a minute here talking to you about Built Bar Puffs, because if you haven't tried the Built Bar Puff, then you are depriving yourselves of another one of life's greatest joys. Just talked about playing overseas, what's so great. 2 games a week. It's such a real great joy. And not quite to that level, but as far as eating something, pretty close. Built Puff. It's and we've got cookie dough chunk puffs. I might as well. If you don't go and order them now, I'm going to order them all myself. So I'm asking you to do me a favor so I'm not just drowning in Built Bar Puffs, but you should do it because I think they're going to be just amazing. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making, and 15 grams of protein. That is a healthy little snack. Snag a box for you, your family. It's a perfect treat. I can tell you these Built Puffs are very, very good. I had a 13-year-old in the car with me at one point, and I got a delivery of Built Puffs, and he ate half of them. So he kept going back for more. If it's good enough for a 13-year-old boy, then you know it's delicious. Cookie dough chunk puff covered in 100% chocolate. It's healthy, it's tasty, and obviously chocolate-covered cookie dough with a light, fluffy texture is amazing. So go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCK15. You'll get 15% off every order. Try these cookie dough chunk puffs. You can go back and try something else. Sample one little thing. Don't spend too much money because you can try 1 or 2 things. I know you're going to go back. So use the promo code LOCK15. It gets you 15% off every single time at Built.com. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. How about making Locked On NBA your second listen? I keep telling you I'm hosting on Wednesdays with Jake Madison. We got rotating hosts every day of the week. It's a great take on the league as a whole. We're talking about every little detail. So
he's under contract for several years. So he might have to, wherever he gets traded, he might have to learn to love it in some way or another. And obviously,
Can I interrupt you though for a second?
yeah,
Because he signed a 4-year deal with Brooklyn, and he's supposed to learn to love it in Brooklyn with a 4-year contract. So you say he
okay,
doesn't have a choice,
so
but
that
he's
gets to
asking.
what I'm. Yeah. So that gets to where I'm going with this a little bit.
Okay.
Um, like we're obviously veering completely into the realm of speculation here. Are we
Oh.
100% sure that he is still best friends with Kyrie Irving?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I think so. I mean,
But he kind of wants to leave.
yeah. I mean, that's the question, right? Because I keep seeing various. I don't know. A lot of it is speculation, but I mean, he went there because of Kyrie. They teamed
Yep.
up to go there.
Yep. Of course.
Um, I
Well, here's
think
okay. So expanding that a little bit though, right? Here's the thing. He he has spent a year with Kyrie, or a couple years now with Kyrie Irving, where before it's not like these guys went to college together. It's not like these guys had ever played together before.
right.
They had only kind of, I mean, I'm sure they interacted, and obviously they interacted and stuff off the court, but they had never been like professional colleagues before. And there is a difference. There's a lot of people that I'm friends with that I wouldn't necessarily want to work with, or people that I work with well that I wouldn't necessarily be friends with. And then there's a few people like yourself who I'm friends with and I work with, and it's been great. But like, I'm
Has
like,
been-
well, I mean, you asked me to come on for the third day in a row. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
No, but I think like it's entirely plausible. I think that KD. Look, I like the Kyrie Boston situation. It got real toxic. It remains real toxic. Like everybody there, everybody's just being toxic to each other in that scenario. However, I do wonder if a year or two of playing with and interacting with Kyrie Irving professionally kind of tells KD like, okay, it may not have been entirely Boston in this scenario. It
Yeah.
might have been a little bit,
Right.
like, again, I've got friends who I can look at their situation and be like, yo, I really like hanging out with that guy, but like I can kind of see where the other side was coming from.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you're working with somebody and he's like, "Oh, my ex-wife, oh, she's a, whatever, a string of expletives that
Yeah,
someone might use in that situation." Then you become roommates and you're like, "Oh, damn. She might have had a point here."
that lady might have been right.
She I'm starting to think that he has some culpability here.
Yeah,
Totally fair. Totally fair. Um, I I think part of what I'm doing is I just don't believe in these rumors to a degree where I'm like, I I can't make any sense of Boston trading for Kevin Durant right now. I can understand the general, it's Kevin Durant, you got to make a deal for Kevin Durant. But at that, if the Celtics were of that mindset, why didn't they just do it right away? And that's why do the Brogdon thing? Why do the Gallinari thing? Why let the TPE expire? Which people asked me on Twitter, and Tom said, I was a little confused about this on my own. The Celtics had a $17 million TPE. If they had traded for KD before that expired and do a 3-for-1 or 4-for-2, you had a $17 million tool to replenish what you lost, at least to some degree. Why let that expire? Why do all of these other things? And then all of a sudden say, you know what? We do want to trade for Kevin Durant. We actually do. And so what if we didn't do this other thing that we could have? Why? So what if we let that go? No, I cannot connect those dots. I cannot. And I cannot believe other people who are sitting there like, well, this could be serious. Like, no, I just cannot connect the dots of the Celtics seriously trying to go for Kevin Durant right now when all of the other things at their disposal, they just let them go away. I can't. So now I'm searching for every possible justification that I can to say, hey, everybody, don't treat this seriously at all. And I know we're all looking for content, but this is day 3 of my content. and I'm not treating it seriously. So follow me. Basically, be like John.
I think one of the things that's happened over the last 3 days, or at least last 4 days since that came out, is like the first day you get this initial wave, because sometimes you do get that where it's like things start to happen, things start to ramp up a little bit, and it's like, oh, here we go, is something happening here? And then as it cools down and you get a little further away, you get the Windhorse report or the Windhorse speculation where he's like, this is probably a few weeks old. You get Zach Lowe being like, it's not probably 3 weeks old, but it's not anything to like, go crazy over.
Mm-hmm.
And there starts to be a little bit of separation. Everybody kind of calms down a little bit and is like, okay, Sean Marks obviously is the one behind this. This is clearly a leverage play. And you start to get all of that stuff. And then it's, I think cooler heads start to prevail a little bit. It reminds me a little bit of because it's different than this, of the Kyrie rumors, right? Where Kyrie requested the trade and there were a bunch of teams involved and a couple people kind of were like, maybe Boston, but probably not. And then all of a sudden, hey, like Boston is kind of a contender here for Kyrie. Kind of a similar thing happened with Kemba, actually, if I remember right, that like Boston wasn't involved initially. And then I think it was Mark Stein was like, the Celtics are a sleeper for Kemba Walker. And I think it felt like on whatever day this came out, Tuesday, whatever it is, I don't know what day of the week it is ever anymore.
Yeah, no, it was Monday morning, Monday into Tuesday, so like 2:30 Tuesday morning.
Okay, so at that point, it did kind of feel like here we go, but clearly, here we don't go. That's not happening. Like it's not happening like imminently, and that obviously, when it's not happening imminently, when we're not building to it, that's when I feel like you can start to kind of like take a step back and be like, okay, there's a million reasons why this probably isn't going to happen, or why there's a million reasons why this shouldn't happen, or it's unlikely to happen, whatever it is. So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at with it now, where I could talk myself into it. I can still see the vision on Kevin Durant. I still wouldn't do it, but I think we're starting to get enough separation to where it feels a little bit more natural to be like, yeah, probably not.
We're treating this like Kevin Durant has no choice. I think he does have a choice, or at least has some influence over this. And the Celtics can very easily back channel their way to information. I don't think they're flying blind here. And
yes, correct.
So if Durant's representation indicates, no, you know what? You actually should make this move. Then, okay, fine. Then I can see maybe the timing of this is simply Kevin Durant going, you know what? Exactly like you said, Tom, that he's like, you know what? I think Kyrie's full of it.
Love the guy, but
love him to death, but he's very clearly kind of out there. I didn't realize exactly how out there he was. I look at Boston. I think there's a chance for a championship there, and I like that. I've played with Tatum. I've played with, I know Marcus Smart. Like I know, like I can see that. So maybe this timing is Durant going, you know what? I'm okay with Boston, and Boston saying, oh well, if you're okay with us, then we'll, certainly let's talk.
We'll make a call. Yeah,
absolutely. So fine. That's fine. But what I don't think is happening is Boston is trying to worm their way into the Kevin Durant sweepstakes right now and willing to say, oh yeah, Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown and Grant Williams and some picks. Yeah, I think we're going to do that. That is absolutely no out of the question. Not going to happen. But there are so many what ifs. I feel confident in my take, but I could be wrong. I mean, what if Jaylen Brown, what if the Celtics do have some intel on Jaylen Brown? What if the Celtics are sitting there saying, and people bring up the Kanye West thing, which is not his agent, it's a marketing kind of, brand type of thing.
He has sort of affiliated himself with Kanye in like an official capacity.
Yes. So Kanye's not going in there and talking to Brad. Kanye's taking the Juice brand and working with Jaylen to push that stuff. That's the extent of Kanye. But, hey, look, anytime anybody affiliates themselves with Kanye West, you got to say, really?
Side note. Can you imagine Kanye West walking in and negotiating with Brad Stevens?
Oh my God.
I need it.
Can you live stream those negotiations?
Yes, please.
Are there two more opposite people in the world than Kanye West and Brad Stevens? I can't imagine.
I would assume so, but I can't come up with it off the top of my head.
You have to really work. You have to get some really good Hollywood screenwriters in there to help you craft that. And here's another thing about Jaylen that I think is interesting. And I don't know if it signals a shift or maybe this is just always who he was, but I remember early on he's only 25. But Jayson was always the guy who was going to get the endorsements. Jayson was going to, excuse me, potato chips, and he did honeydew coffee right away. And he did all of these Rocketon, and he's always, Jayson Tatum is trying to be like Shaq, and he's trying to be he wants every endorsement out there so he can spend his endorsement money and pocket his NBA money. And it's a wealth building plan, which is, I totally respect that. That's fine. You want to do that? Cool. I can't sit there and knock it because I'm sitting here talking about Built bars and stuff. So, we're all trying to sell stuff. We're all trying to make our money. But Jaylen was always like you know what? I'm going to be the conscious guy. I'm going to do my MIT lab. I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be doing that. I'm not out there trying to get endorsements. Yet, all of a sudden, now here comes the juice brand, and here comes the affiliation with Kanye. And maybe he's not doing endorsements. He's not selling stuff for other people. He's doing the entrepreneurial thing. And it's a different version of the same thing. You are still selling something. It's just an interesting shift that Jaylen is now out there kind of focusing on the branding and all of that stuff. Maybe shift is the wrong word, because he has talked about brand for a while.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because it's a different, it is a side hustle, right? And every NBA player kind of has their side thing, but it's the juice brand and the clothing and all that stuff. It is a little bit more interesting because Rakuten and everything, we get the hilarious Tatum commercial where he gets $30 back in the mail, and he just sits there and kind of nods to himself yes, look at this. I got
$30. Now Deuce can finally have a birthday present.
I'm gonna get him that bike belt he's always wanted, so he can go ring along the sidewalk. Yeah. So but that is just Tatum, pretending to be an actor for 5 minutes and then moving on with his day. Jaylen has to invest actual time and energy into the juice brand. He has to I don't know. I'm sure, obviously I'm sure he's got designers and stuff, but you have to kind of actually have a vision for things and actually have some ideas. And I don't know. I think that's kind of interesting. I don't know that I would ever want to do a clothing brand. I was in bands, and you had to design your own clothes and stuff like that. And that was kind of fun, right? You try to sell your shirts at your t-shirts at shows and stuff like that. But so actually, no, I take that back. I see the vision. I think no,
seriously.
Yeah, Jaylen's thing is kind of interesting, and it is it's almost like he needs a project outside of basketball, right? He needs he wants to kind of just do something in his spare time, and that. You got spare time, you gotta find a way to use it. That's pretty cool.
I don't think people understand how much spare time a guy could have in the NBA, right? You show up, you practice, you get there, I don't know what time, let's just say 10 a.m. Even if you're there for 4 or 5 hours between film, working out, lifting, treatment, 6 hours, you still get the rest of your night. You can sit there and watch Wheel of Fortune, Family Feud. Maybe you want to be a Game Show Network guy. But no, I think Jaylen wants to do other things. I think all of this is like folded into some of the discussion. And does what Jaylen wants to do push him into, well, I want to be in New York or LA or somewhere, not necessarily because that's the glamour market. I don't think that applies as much anymore. You can have your social media presence. You can live in, I mean, Russell Westbrook became a monster star playing in Oklahoma City. So did Kevin Durant. Like your star transcends the market now because of social media and all of that. But the designers are all in New York City. I can see that. And if Jaylen has bigger things. Jaylen has said it, and I'm certainly not going to hold this against him. This is where we diverge from sports talk radio. Sports talk radio will be like, no, you focus on your basketball all the time. And I'm like, you know what? He's 26. He wants to create something. He wants to be a small business owner. He wants to be a business owner. He wants to be an entrepreneur. He wants to employ other Black entrepreneurs. He wants to create a network where Black people thrive. It's a very stated goal. He wants to create this whole thing where he uplifts people in his community. Totally respect his vision for doing that. And it's part of why I want to actually keep him in Boston, because he focuses on the communities in Boston that need the most help. He has a very strong focus on the exact right places, education of young people in these communities. I think he's an extraordinarily valuable person in the city of Boston. So that's part of why I'd love to keep him around. But from a basketball perspective, do these pursuits make him say, hey, look, very much like LeBron did, like, hey, I want to go make movies. I'm going to go play for the Lakers. Even though the Lakers had nothing to offer at that time, he forced his way there. Now, obviously, LeBron's different because he made Anthony Davis, go to LA with him. But I don't know. I'm yammering on right
now. And
then
a super mediocre roster. He made a super mediocre roster show up around him as well. So, yeah, I mean, LeBron's got a lot going on out in LA.
He does. They're lucky that the league stopped down and let everybody get healthy so they can go and be healthy and for their championship run. Because if it was just a normal NBA season, I think it would have gone the exact same way. Everybody would have been hurt, and I don't think they would have won the championship. But hey, it is what it is. They won, great. But anyway, side note, that's just me tweaking Lakers fans. I do wonder, and I'm curious what your take is on if Jaylen's outside pursuits might make him say, hey, look, in 2 years, free agency is coming up. He is going to become a free agent because contractually the extension will be like $40 million less or so.
Yeah.
At least, other than, rather than the becoming a free agent and signing a new deal. It's also an opportunity for him to be like, that's great, but I got a brand. Do you think that brand maybe pushes him out of Boston, and that this is part of Brad Stevens saying, I don't even want to deal with that possibility moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, some of that obviously depends on if he makes All NBA, right? Like that would matter. Would be an interesting wrinkle in all of this. Yeah, I mean, I think Jaylen definitely is somebody, he does have all these other things that he cares about. And I think you're right about the designers being in New York, although you can contact people, you can do stuff.
I mean, there is Zoom, right?
So there is Zoom, right? I think to me the more interesting thing for Jaylen is like, he's not a guy who I think would ever really want to stagnate in a place. I don't think he would ever want to. I think he kind of likes. From what I can tell, he seems to kind of like something that's a little bit fresh, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe that doesn't extend to his professional career, right? Like if he's in a good situation, if you're in a good situation professionally, you can get freshness elsewhere, right? Like you can,
Sure.
you can make it work. Like if the Celtics are going to win a championship with him, and he's got a good relationship with Tatum and a good relationship with Brad and a good relationship with Ime, and he's out in the community doing important things and helping people. I mean, there's all that, every psychological research and report will say that, like, if you help people, your mental health goes way up, and there's just a lot to like helping others that makes you feel good. Maybe Jaylen feels like he's got a lot of connections that way in Boston, and that gives him kind of fonder feelings about Boston. I think all these things are possible, but I do think that it is something to watch, right? It's not so much. It's not that Jaylen's like a weird guy or anything like that. He's not. It's just that he's a little bit different. He looks at things a little bit differently. He has a little bit of a different perspective than a lot of guys, and that's certainly something I think it makes the Celtics conversations a little bit more complicated, because it isn't just as simple as, hey, I want my friends to play with me and I want to win championships. Like, I think there's more to Jaylen Brown than that, and whether he wants to, whether he's satisfied with what he has in Boston or not, I do think that the fact that there is more there, kind of in his priorities and everything else, is perfectly reasonable and admirable, and also does kind of make the Celtics jobs a little bit more complicated as far as the decision making goes.
Yeah. And then there's also the element of, he understands that to do all of the things that he wants to do, he has to be the best basketball player he can be. Right. So it's like a dual motivation. Playing the game motivates him to do this other stuff because you want to have a departure from the game. You have to have a departure from the game. I mean, very few people are able to just consume basketball. Like, Ime is one of few people who I loved his quote earlier this season. It's like, well, it's not like I'm out flying kites or anything. It's just basically basketball. But I don't actually think that that's entirely healthy. I think you need to have a few hours of, you know what? I am going to do something. I'm going to garden. I'm going to cook. I'm going to learn the piano. Because you got to take your brain and shut it off from the other stuff, I think. And that, when you get back to that stuff, it just helps you kind of grow. Just like when you're growing muscle, you don't just sit there and bench press 24 hours a day. You got to take a rest. Yeah. So I do think that all of this is also motivating Jaylen to say, if I'm going to do all of the stuff that I want to do, it doesn't take me away from my basketball. It makes me want to be even better at basketball, because if I let the basketball side suffer, then the brand is meaningless. The whole point of the brand is for people to say, I want to be like Jaylen. I'm going to get the Juice hoodie. I'm going to go to a game. I'm going to say, hey, Jaylen, look, I bought your stuff. So maybe he can wave at you. Maybe he can sign something. And then you feel good about going home and be like, oh my God, Jaylen waved at me and it was awesome. And it's all meaningful. So he still has to keep a good reputation. Can't go out there and just bounce from city to city and look like a mercenary, because you lose your curating, the thing that makes you popular.
Sure.
You have to continue playing great basketball, and that has to motivate you to be an even better basketball player. And so there are ups and downs to each side of this conversation.
I was gonna say, because the devil's advocate to that is, if he goes to, let's say, New York, if he ends up with the Knicks or something, like, yes, he will be like, his Q rating in Boston will suffer, but his overall Q rating, I mean, he
Sure.
goes to the Knicks, because the other thing about Jaylen is that he's a very good basketball player. So he goes to the Knicks are going to have a very good basketball player, and there
Sure.
have been precious few of those in New York over the last decade or so.
That is
So
true.
the Q rating might be Boston's worst argument. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's a lot of these what ifs surrounding this, and I think, like, we got to do a whole podcast just on Jaylen, the player and the person. I would love to get Jaylen on the podcast because I don't even want to talk basketball with him because I feel like he has a lot of stuff going on outside that he really, really loves and really wants to focus on. And I think he sees basketball, like he loves basketball and he's a competitor and he wants to win a championship. Like all of the stuff that you want in a player. I think he has all of that. But also when his career is over, he's not going to sit there and be like, well, now what? Do I get into coaching? Do I get into like some guys just all they have is basketball. Jaylen, I think, might be one of those guys who's like, okay, hey, at whatever age, thank you, goodbye. And you won't see him around, like you won't see him coaching. You won't see him as a talking head. You'll see him doing what he did this summer. He showed up in France. He's at fashion weeks and he's at all of these other things. He's a fascinating person and he's not he's like a multi-pronged. He's a basketball player, he's an activist, he's a business person, and all of those pursuits make conversations about do you think he wants to stay in Boston very, very difficult because there are many, many reasons why he would and many reasons why he wouldn't. And it's very difficult to kind of say what he will do because motivation, his motivation now and his motivation 2 years from now, who knows what it's going to be. But yeah.
It is interesting that he plays for a GM who is all basketball all the time. Like you say anything about Brad Stevens.
Yeah, Brad is definitely.
And a coach who might be even more so, right? Like, so it is kind of interesting to think of it from that way. Like I do kind of wonder, not that I think that this is going to affect the decision making, but it is kind of funny that I think KD and Tatum are two guys who, are pretty much, I mean, they think pretty heavily about basketball, right?
Yeah.
Like KD's always having the discussions with people on Twitter, and he's always got thoughts on things. And Tatum, I mean, he like pretty much just is a dad and a hooper, and like that's like yes. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of funny to think that maybe the mentality with KD and Tatum would make a little bit more sense, or not make more sense. Would be would almost line up with the way that Brad and Ime think too.
Yeah. No, look, there are valid points. I mean, look, I don't think the Celtics should or would trade for Kevin Durant. And if anybody doesn't know my rationale now, go back and listen to the last two podcasts.
45 minutes into the third podcast.
Yeah. If you don't know by now, come on. But there are arguments to be made for it that make sense. I get it. I get the other arguments. I don't agree with those arguments, but I get it. I understand. And that's one of those points where I think if you put Kevin Durant in Boston, and this is just strictly not instead of Jaylen, this is just strictly you just put Kevin Durant in Boston. You put him around Brad, you put him around Ime, you put him around Marcus and Jayson, and I think he would actually be like, wow, these are the hoopers. These are the guys who are like, they really do just enjoy the hell out of basketball, and they really just this is their lives. And I think he can appreciate at the very least that level of dedication to the sport. So I do think that if Kevin Durant was in Boston, he could, regardless of what he might or might not have been told, he'll, make his own decisions. He's a grown man. He's 34 years old. Even if, going back to my first thing about that I said in this conversation, even if I told you, Tom,
Carson Edwards should go to Barcelona.
Yes. No, fast forward. The next thing.
Okay.
Even if I told you, Tom, that restaurant you said you want to go? No, don't go there. It sucked. And you might still say, okay, duly noted, but still interested. I still think I might like it. I've seen the menu. I will either confirm or have a different experience. But I'm a grown person and I can figure it out on my own. And that just might be where Kevin Durant lies. Like, thanks, Kyrie. I know you stomped on the logo. Get it? I think it might be different for me.
Yeah.
And it's the nuance in this conversation continues. But unless something else breaks, I think this might be the last day of talking about this. I think we've stretched it to the limit. We've tested the tensile strength.
Man, we solved it. I think we solved it. I think the answer is that the Celtics may or may not trade for Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
And it may or may not work out. So
I think we've established, yes.
We did it.
It could happen. It could not. KD might hate it here, but he might also like it.
Yeah.
Jaylen probably doesn't want to leave, but also leaving might actually be okay.
Could leave.
Yeah. And this podcast might be over, or it could continue for another. Nah, it's over. It's
okay.
Over. That's where we end. Podcast is over.
Okay. All right.
This is where we'll end it. Tom Westerholm and his mustache. Tom_NBA. Appreciate you as always, Tom.
Appreciate you, man.
And I always appreciate you, the listener, tuning in, downloading the show, taking it with you in the car, listening in the shower. If you're still in the shower, we've been talking for like 45 minutes. That's a long shower. Hopefully, you're just sitting there in that nice steam. All right, that's cool. Love it. Walking the dog, nice long walk with the dog. That's cool too. Whatever you're doing, however you listen to the show, I appreciate that. Watching the show, you can watch the show on YouTube. Pop it on while you're making your dinner or running your errands, vacuuming or whatever. Pop it on at work. Put it in the background tab. You can see me again, very clearly, obviously, live from the practice facility. Doesn't matter that the Mass Pike is behind me and no cars have gone by on the Mass Pike for 45 minutes. There's a very obvious and very nicely explained reason for that. But watch the show on YouTube so you can see what I'm talking about. And make sure you're liking, commenting and all of that stuff, and sharing the podcast. Might be the most important part. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your family, tell your random strangers you come across on the street. You should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.